everybody. Dr. Steph here, your spiritual coach and guide and host of Shame to Shine. I am so pleased that you have tuned in, and I'm really hoping that this series is providing the inspiration that is communicating to your own essence that it is okay to accept something in your life that you feel like is so terrible or so disgusting or just not something that you feel like you can address. But that is the whole goal, to give you these stories of women who have endured a lot of shame, internal and external, and have found some sort of pathway into accepting themselves and then seeing how that shame can very often turn into motivation for creating connection for other people and creating that container for healing and self-acceptance that so many of these speakers have done. So I want to share a little bit about my story and also weave in why I wanted to even host this series because they are very related. So I will say that shame has been a part of my being for a long, long time. And that as an empath, I learned really quickly that I was very uncomfortable with strong emotions from other people. And what I would do was retreat inward and learn, how do I make other people okay? How do I diffuse and neutralize this situation? And this is particularly true with my siblings, especially my sister, who's 16 months younger than me, and who was a firecracker growing up, right from the start. So that I learned that I didn't like feelings of being chaotic or unsettled. And so I learned how to manage other people's emotions so that I could feel okay. And I didn't know that I was doing that for a long time, and that transitioned into adulthood. And ultimately, because of various life experiences, led me to choosing a partner and choosing a marriage that where I was very much still in this dynamic of making him okay so that I could be okay. And I specifically chose that so that I could feel needed. And that worked for a little while. I wanted to feel needed and I wanted to feel safe in not being left and not being cheated on. That was so important to me. And found a partner who similarly had wounds of wanting to feel accepted and loved. And so we were able to meet each other in this place of like, I will give you the solve to your wounds. And then we can just both agree to function together in this marriage, even though we weren't bringing out our best selves for years. So there was a particular season of awakening that I had after really living my life based on keeping that sense of safety, based on keeping other people's expectations in check and not being invisible, but just kind of camouflaging so that I wasn't too disruptive because I didn't like those feelings of chaos around me. And, found myself very at some point in life just pinched, just like my spirit could not take any more of not listening to myself. And the external circumstances around that were being in a PhD program, realizing that this was not the direction academically that I wanted to go, but I didn't see a way out, and also had a master's in occupational therapy and didn't have the job experiences to show me that that's what I wanted to do. I got into OT to do something a lot different than the jobs that I was doing. And so I just felt so stuck, and I had invested all this time and all this money in advanced training and felt like I had a bunch of haphazard skills, but didn't know how to streamline those in a way that could bring me a satisfying career and income. And I was just stuck. So I didn't feel like I could quit the PhD program, but I also didn't feel like I could go on because it was so antithetical to my being and because the environment was not good for me. And at in it was to an extent of having a passive death wish on a daily basis for a couple years. Even though I knew at my core I wanted to live and have been, my default is joy. So I knew that and knew there's something off here about the choices that I have made, but I just felt so stuck and like I couldn't get out. And it forced me, this moment of stuckness forced me to take inventory on my life and be honest with myself about the choices I had made and what I really wanted and what changes I needed to make to love my life. And I realized that I needed to confront the issues in my marriage because to that point I had been very indirect about, like, do you think that this relationship is good? Asking my ex-husband, do you think that we're in a good spot? Because I'm not really sure. And do you think we need to go to therapy? Because I think that would be great. And not really being direct about wanting to have some sort of repair and leaving it completely up to him. And, that wasn't good for me either because then I wasn't able to speak my truth. And so got to this point of I'm unhappy with everything in my life, and I particularly have not been for years addressing some fundamental problems in this relationship of wanting to feel emotionally seen and supported, as opposed to feeling like I was more in the mother role and doing the emotional support work of proving to someone else that they were worthy of love. And I I was so anxious, so nervous about addressing this because I felt like looking at this might mean I need to change. So I'm I don't want to do that. So for years I let it stay in my peripheral vision because I didn't want to disrupt things in the marriage and then in the surrounding ripple of community, family, friends, etc. And I also didn't want to disrupt my own chances at having children because I felt like this is my only pathway to having children, which is something I always anticipated that I would have in my life, is to be a mother. And so I finally confronted this is this is not it, and just confronted my ex-husband that I wanted to go to therapy. And that dominoed into really addressing the issues and the fundamental place that we had built, the fundamental space of this is what our relationship is built from and this is built from our wounds, and how do we continue? And realizing I don't want to continue. I love this person. I want him to be happy. I don't want to continue in this marriage. And I had so much shame around this realization because I felt like I'm hearing, working with older adults as an occupational therapist, I'm hearing them say on a daily basis that millennials are quitting at their marriages and they need to stick them out. And I'm hearing this from all sorts of adults of how marriage is just hard and you need to put effort in. And I am an effort girl. I am like, I will do the work. I gritted through that PhD. I did not love it, but I was like, I fuck it. I am going to do this. And I am going to get this. I am going, I don't have enough confidence to do anything else. So I am going to finish this. I am going to finish the workout. I am going to finish the work, whatever it takes. I have been one who will roll up my sleeves and get it done. So that message of millennials just give up and they don't want to work hard enough triggers something in me that's like, I work hard. No, that's not me. I don't give up when it gets tough. So there was this shame around feeling like I want to get a divorce because I was hearing that from my patients and just hearing that general message from society. And then feeling like, what? I am going to lose everything. I'm going to lose my reputation. My ex-husband will no longer respect me. His family will hate me. My own family will see me as a loser. My surrounding community will misunderstand. These patients that I'm dealing with will see me as a quitter, on and on and on of all this shame that I was heaping on myself once I realized I wanted to get a divorce. And yet I had been doing so much inner work and was close enough to my inner voice of feeling like I can't go on living by other people's expectations. I cannot let those fears and this shame run my life because it makes me want to die. It makes me not want to live anymore. So that just to say that the shame was was so bad. The shame was so deep, and yet the my capacity to deal with it got to the point of like, well, the shame isn't as bad as how bad this current circumstance is of me not listening to myself. And I was afraid to even share this for a long time because I thought my ex-husband is going to hear this and think that living with him was so bad and that he was awful. And I was so scared of him perceiving that message because I always wanted to communicate, you are a being who's worthy of love, and didn't know how to separate that truth from my own sense of responsibility for being the one to prove that to him. So there was shame around that too. And and once I took the courageous and difficult steps to tune out the external voices and to honor my own and nurture my own self and feel the shame of I am going to make a massive mess. And I don't want to do that because I don't like that chaos. I don't like making a mess. And just allowing that and sitting for months with that mess and nurturing it and accepting it and loving myself, something incredible happened. I got my life back. I got my life back. I got my energy back. I I now feel so much compassion for that self that was terrified of making a mess and terrified of how other people would feel and what other people would think. I was terrified of hurting people. And once I transitioned through this process of of not allowing my shame to continue to dictate my life choices, my life just opened up. And I still have shame, but it's so different. I have such a different relationship with it, where the shame that I feel is I see it more clearly that it is more my survival mechanisms that are trying to keep me safe. And on a past interview with Christy Uffelman, she talks about Brene Brown saying shame is I am a mistake and guilt is I made a mistake. And those are totally woven together. And for me, you could probably hear the shame and guilt are totally woven together. But the I am a mistake, realizing that that message internally, it's not that it was true, but my internal self knew if it toggled on that message, then I would take the actions to keep me small and keep me safe. So those lies continued and perpetuated, but in a self-preservation effort, not in a self-sabotage on purpose, but in a self-preservation. And so learning how to relate to that side of myself and to accept my whole self, including the shame, has completely transformed my day-to-day experience. I can give you external examples of how my life has changed, but the more profound change is how I feel minute to minute, day to day, where I went from dreading my life, dreading my days, counting the weeks till like, when is that next break going to come that I'm going to have a week of not having anything scheduled where I know that I can sleep in for a few days because I just want to sleep. And going from that to being excited about my days, to having something I'm looking forward to every day, to seeing my partner and just being so happy to see him and being happy to be with myself and feeling good in my body and enjoying my workout, enjoying my meditation, enjoying my coffee, enjoying simple moments in life. So there's really the landscape that I'm painting is a little bit more broad and nuanced than just this simplified shame to shine. But so let's get back to the simplified shame to shine of how this relates and what the goal is. Because as you have heard in all of the interviews, the shame to shine is almost a misnomer, that it's not that that when we accept ourselves and address our shame, that it necessarily is like a light switch into radiance. Rather, rather, in this circular process of growth and self-acceptance, the energy that was once attached to staying small and inward and contracting, it gets healed in a way that allows us to be brighter and to extend a hand of compassion and to share, you will be okay. I dealt with this. It was very painful. And I went through it, and on the other side, it's really good and you will be okay. And so we're able to, it's almost like an inverted flower bloom. Like the shame keeps these beautiful parts of us hidden because we're scared of the imperfections. And yet, when we deal with the shame, it just transitions that energy into a bloom of being able to offer kindness, compassion, resources to other people, which in turn can attract community, it can attract success, it can attract wealth. So the shame to shine is about that movement, that circular process of like you're not going to have necessarily a light switch of everything blooming at once, but you can see that visual of maybe a lot of the petals unfolding, but then you'll still find throughout your life that like, oh, here's another petal to unfold that has been contracted in. And that tends to be the way. So as I was going through this experience of having a lot of fear and a lot of shame around changing my life, getting a divorce, finishing my PhD, transitioning into industry because I wanted to use my skills, but in a way where I could make a better income through through a more contained job where I mean academics I am so I am so impressed and I have so much respect for passionate academics that are like I want to spend all my time doing this. And that was not me. I was in a field and I was going down a road where it would have been continuing to prove my worth, prove my worth, prove my worth, working 60 hours, working 80 hours, getting that grant in, revising it, revising the paper, and just too many balls in the air. So that wasn't right for me. And you know, the like being okay with not meeting my mentor's expectations, both who hurt me, but both who I respected, and being okay with not meeting their expectations and transitioning into industry, even though it didn't make sense to some people. And you know, then moving on with this, with these YouTube videos and with paradigm expansions and wanting to share, there is something deeper than just what we have, what mainstream healthcare offers. There's something deeper and more healing that a lot of people have touched on, but that's not necessarily in the mainstream. And I was even scared to put my voice out there of like, I'm with these guys. There's something deeper about owning our own existence and loving ourselves. There is something more to life when we do go through this processes of self-acceptance. So as I was reflecting and in real time experiencing the joy of changing my life, even though I would have loved to know this at 25 and made different decisions at 25, knowing it at 35 was still awesome because I still have so much life ahead of me. And then I came across this book conscious luck that is really beautiful. And this was kind of after going through this process. And here is another example of group of people who have experienced this level of what's possible with our own life expansion, and they've written about it in a beautiful framework. So they say that when you choose to be lucky, that you are deciding that you will accept blessings into your life. And they say that they go through 8 steps of how you can make that choice to increase your luck. And they define luck in a very particular way. And one of the really compelling pieces of this book that I read years ago that just has stuck with me was that when you accept your own shame, it can become a magnet for luck because of that same principle of the blossoming of energy. Now, instead of being internal, it turns external, and you, almost as an invitation, as a blossoming, as a lighthouse for other people dealing with that same energy to perhaps see a way out for themselves. And this is one way that you can be generous with your own energy and also attract luck to you, according to these authors. And that stuck with me. And I was working months ago with a client who was talking about shame around these same principles of being in mid-30s, going through a divorce, not meeting the milestones of life that they thought they would have by now, still being in school, still dealing with, is it going to be possible for me to find a partner, for me to have children, for me to have this image of a life that I thought I wanted and I thought would make me happy? Are those things even possible? Because this isn't what I planned. And I have shame around it, right? And so I thought, I would love to share my own story, but I would love to share other women's stories who have dealt with this sense of shame, then accepting it, and then going from that flower blossom internal into external, and it changing their lives in profound ways. And so this series I'm so excited about because there are stories, there is that through line of self-acceptance having that power of women dealing with really difficult things, with abuse, with infertility, with sexual assault, with job loss, with identity loss, they're dealing with these things and have learned through self-acceptance how to transform their energy to have a different reality than what that shame was keeping them stuck in. And so that is the whole goal, for you to hear these stories and start to like loosen up the rock that we all have, the rock that's like, yeah, but my shame is different. My shame is different. I could never really heal from it. Like, you don't know what goes on inside my head. You don't know what I experienced. I have a special kind of shame that no one else has, and mine is different. And we all feel like that. It's very isolating. And so the goal here is to share this through line of storytelling that maybe you could, shift that rock a little bit and start to get some sunlight in that area and see the the fertile soil of what you've experienced has given, and how healing from it, giving the sunlight to that fertile soil, could blossom into some beautiful plants that offer health, vitality to you and to others around you. So this is the whole goal, to give you that sense of maybe it's possible for me to accept myself and heal from this thing that I'm so ashamed of, and see that there's actually goodness on the other side for me. And again, it's not a linear crossover. It's absolutely circular. It's not a one-time fix. But the mindset, that the whole goal of this is to offer that mindset shift of, this could be possible for me. So I will leave you with that. I thank you so much for tuning in. I'm sending you lots of love, And if this is exciting to you, if you're really vibing with it, I would love for you to subscribe to Paradigm Expansions. Give me a comment. Tell me what resonated. Tell me what kinds of things you're looking for as I continue to do these summits of what would be so meaningful to you to hear from other people. So thank you again. Mwah.